Le Havre is often listed on cruise itineraries as Le Havre, Paris. But there's one important thing you should know before your ship arrives. Paris is almost 3 hours away from the cruise port. So in this video, I'll walk you through 10 things you need to know about visiting Le Havre on a cruise, including the reality of traveling to Paris, other places you can visit in Normandy, and what you can easily do if you decide to stay closer to the port. Cruise ships dock inside the commercial harbour at Le Havre, which sits at the mouth of the River Seine in the Normandy region of northern France. It's a large working port rather than a traditional cruise harbour, so the cruise terminal is located inside the port area rather than directly in the centre of the city. The terminal itself is fairly small and basic, but you'll usually find a tourist information desk, free Wi-Fi, and a small shop selling drinks, snacks, and souvenirs. Once you exit the terminal building, there is a small parking area where you'll normally find taxis waiting, and this is also where ship-shore excursions and the cruise line shuttle buses depart from. Le Havre is still considered a walk-off cruise port, which means you can leave the ship and exit the terminal area on foot without needing a shuttle just to get out of the dock. However, if you're planning to join independent tours, such as Le Havre for example, you'll usually need to walk outside the main cruise port gates to meet those operators. From the cruise terminal, the distance into the center of Le Havre is roughly 2 kilometers, which usually takes around 20 to 30 minutes to walk. If you're not walking, the main thing to remember is that taxis, cruise shuttle buses, and ship excursions all leave from the terminal side before the main port gate. The biggest decision many cruise passengers face in Le Havre is whether to travel to Paris. And the key thing to understand is that Paris is about 3 hours away by road. Most cruise excursions to Paris leave the ship early in the morning and involve a coach journey of around 3 hours each way, which means roughly 6 hours traveling in total. Once you arrive in Paris, most excursions allow around 3 to 4 hours in the city before returning to the ship. If visiting Paris has always been on your bucket list, then this can still be a great experience, but it's important to go into it knowing that it's a long day with a lot of time spent traveling. Because of the distance involved, most cruise passengers choose to visit Paris using a ship-organized shore excursion rather than trying to arrange transport independently. Most cruise excursions from Le Havre give you around 3 to 4 hours in Paris, so the key is to keep things simple and focus on one area of the city. Many tours include a panoramic coach drive with photo stops at landmarks, such as the Eiffel Tower or the Arc de Triomphe, followed by some free time. If you're exploring on your own, one simple way to spend those few hours is a short walking route along the River Seine, which lets you see several famous sites in a fairly small area. For example, you could start near Notre Dame Cathedral, which sits right in the middle of the Seine. From here, you can walk along the riverbanks, cross some of the historic bridges, and continue towards landmarks, such as the Louvre Museum. Another option many visitors enjoy is heading to Montmartre, where you'll find Sacré-Cœur Basilica at the top of the hill. There are also paid experiences such as Seine River cruises, which are a popular way to see many of the major landmarks from the water in a relatively short time. The main thing to remember is that Paris is a huge city, so with only a few hours available, it's better to focus on one small area rather than trying to see everything. If Paris feels like too much traveling for a single day, there are several other destinations in Normandy that cruise passengers often choose instead. One of the closest and most popular is Honfleur, a beautiful harbour town about 30 to 40 minutes from Le Havre. Another option is visiting the Normandy D-Day landing beaches, which are usually around 1.5 to 2 hours away, depending on which historic sites you visit. These tours typically include places such as Omaha Beach, the American Cemetery, or Arromanches, and offer a powerful insight into the events of the Second World War. You may also see excursions heading to Etretat, famous for its dramatic white chalk cliffs and natural rock arches along the coast. And some cruise lines even offer trips to Mont Saint-Michel, the famous island abbey in Normandy. However, this is a much longer journey, usually around 3 hours each way, so it becomes another very long excursion day. So while Le Havre acts as a gateway to many famous destinations, it's important to remember that most of them still involve a fair amount of traveling. If you're planning to travel further away from the port to places like Paris or Mont Saint-Michel, one of the biggest decisions is whether to book a ship excursion or organize something independently. Ship excursions are usually the easiest option because the cruise line guarantees that the ship will wait if your tour is delayed returning to port. Independent tours can sometimes be cheaper, and you'll often find similar trips listed on platforms like Get Your Guide or Viator. However, if you choose an independent tour, it's important to do your research and make sure there's plenty of time built into the schedule for returning to the ship. For longer trips like Paris, many cruise passengers prefer the peace of mind of a ship excursion, while shorter trips closer to the port can often work well as independent tours. If you'd rather avoid long coach journeys altogether, Le Havre itself can make for a very easy and relaxed cruise port day. The city was heavily damaged during the Second World War and later rebuilt by architect Auguste Perret, who designed the center using a distinctive modern architectural style. Because of this reconstruction, the central area of Le Havre is now listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It feels very different from the medieval towns elsewhere in Normandy, but it's an interesting place to explore and far less crowded than many of the excursion destinations. And the big advantage is that you can explore the city without needing to travel far from the ship. If you decide to explore Le Havre itself, there are two main ways to reach the center. The first option is simply walking from the cruise port, which takes around 20 to 30 minutes over a distance of about 2 kilometers. The walk is flat and easy to follow, although it does pass through the port area, so it's not the most scenic route. Many passengers instead choose the cruise shuttle bus, which usually drops passengers at Place Perret on Rue de Paris. This location is right beside Le Vulcan, the distinctive white theatre building in the center of Le Havre. From here, you're already in the heart of the city and within easy walking distance of the main sites. Once you're in the center of Le Havre, the main sites are all quite close together and easy to explore on foot. One of the most recognizable landmarks is St. Joseph's Church, whose tower rises more than 100 meters above the city and can be seen from much of the surrounding area. Inside the church, you'll find thousands of colored glass panels that create a striking interior. From here, you can easily walk towards the Bassin du Commerce, a harbor basin surrounded by cafes, shops, and restaurants. Nearby, you'll also see Le Vulcan, the distinctive white theatre building designed by Brazilian architect Oscar Niemeyer, which has become one of the most recognizable buildings in the city. Around this area, you'll also find small bakeries and cafes where you can stop for a coffee and try some French patisserie. Even spending an hour or two exploring this part of the city gives you a good feel for Le Havre and makes for a relaxed and easy cruise port visit. If you'd like to visit somewhere more traditional in Normandy without traveling too far, one of the best options from Le Havre is Honfleur. A convenient way to get there from the cruise port is with a local company called Le Havre, which runs shuttle tours directly from Le Havre. The journey takes around 30 to 40 minutes, and the trip currently costs about €29. The tour includes a short introduction to Le Havre on the way out of the city, and once you arrive in Honfleur, you'll usually have around 3 hours to explore. That's plenty of time to wander around the old harbor, where colorful buildings line the waterfront and cafes and restaurants sit right along the quayside. From the harbor, you can easily explore the narrow streets filled with art galleries, small shops and historic buildings, and visit sites such as St. Catherine's Church, which is one of the largest wooden churches in France. There are also plenty of restaurants overlooking the harbor, and this is a great place to stop for lunch. After lunch, you can simply wander around the harbor, browse the shops, or enjoy the views before heading back to the cruise port. It's a lovely town and a great way to experience Normandy without spending most of the day traveling. I'll add a link to Le Havre in the description if you'd like to take a look at their tours. The final thing to remember is to leave yourself plenty of time to return to the cruise ship. If you're exploring Le Havre itself, allow time for the walk or shuttle back through the port area. And if you're traveling further afield to places like Paris or Honfleur, make sure you know the return time for your transport and allow a little extra time in case of delays. Le Havre is often marketed as Paris, but as you've seen, there are actually several ways to spend a cruise day here. But another port that often appears on the same itineraries works very differently. When cruise ships dock in Zeebrugge, most passengers actually head to Bruges. So if your cruise stops there too, watch my guide to 10 things you need to know about Zeebrugge Cruise Port, which is on screen now.